Welcome back for part 13. So if you're continuing with the large blanket, you will be joining this block, making the connection to the line that you have on the right side of your previous squares. So to start for block 49, you will want to join at the bottom of your vertical line. You will need to chain 47 chains and then pick up 47 loops across those chains and make your connection. You'll have a total of 49 loops on your hook for the first row. If you are starting fresh like I am and using this just as a separate block, I just started with chaining the 49 stitches to have the 49 loops on your hook. So pay attention to that depending on how you're using these next set of blocks. So as you work this 49 or block 49, each row you will make the connection along. So again, you might want to add your stitch markers every 10 or 20 rows or so to make sure you join to the right number of rows on your line. You will be working a total of 42 rows. This block is only using TPS and the knit stitch on 2 pages of charts again. So you will just follow the chart as you have on your pattern. The first row, foundation row, you just pick up the loops, then you just count how many purl stitches or knit stitches you need to make this lovely floral design for block 49. So I'll let you work through that. Again, remembering there are 2 sets of pages and you will do 42 rows total for this block. When you have completed block 49, we're going to make a vertical line across the edge and a horizontal line across the top of this block. So you will need to join your line color in back and chain 4. And then working on the back side of that chain in that back bump, we will pick up 4 loops across. One, 2, 3, and 4. And then you'll make your connection as we have with all of our other previous lines and work the return pass. So for the vertical line, you will want to work 42 rows, 6 loops on your hook after you make the connection. So you can go ahead, work that all the way up to the top. Do not bind off. Then you'll pick up the 4 loops across plus the 47 loops across the top of the block. You'll have a total of 53 loops on your hook for the horizontal line, and you'll do 2 rows of the horizontal line. And again, if you wish, you can add some stitch markers at certain points along the side to make sure you've got the right number of rows used. So you can go ahead and work those 2 lines, and I'll meet you here after that. So when you have worked your lines, it should look something like this with the vertical line, 42 rows, and then working the horizontal line, 3 rows of that, 53 loops on your hook. You want to make sure you bind off that horizontal line as well. So then we're going to continue on. We just finished our block 49. We want to work block 50. So again, if you're making the large blanket, you will be making the connection to block 16. So to prepare for block 50, we want to count over 13 loops. So don't count the border stitch, counting over 13 loops and place a marker, and that's where we will begin our next block. You can go ahead, count over 4 more loops for the next vertical line. And then in from the far edge, you want to count over and mark the 5th loop over, and that's where we will start another block. So once you've got that going, we can get ready to start block 50. So block 50 is another azure or lace pattern that we are going to work. It'll be this block here that we're working this time. So we will be working TSS. The main stitch to create the lace pattern is this 3 together where we pull through 4 loops. We have chains to make and picking up in the cluster or in the open space. So I'll work a few rows of that together with you to get you started. You'll join in back at our marker, pick up 13 loops across and either make your connection or pick up your border stitch for 15 loops on the hook. You'll do the regular return pass, and then you can pick up TSS stitches all across for round 2, and I'll meet you at the return pass for round 2. So you can go ahead and work that little bit, and I'll meet you shortly. So for the return pass of row 2, it is listed out the directions for this complete row. You will pull through 1 for that border stitch, and then we'll pull through 2 8 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then we've reached the part where we want to work our 3 together. So we'll yarn over and pull through 4 loops. So the working loop plus the next 3 stitches for that 3 together. And then we'll do a chain 1 or pull through 1. Then we'll pull through the 2 loops, so take 1 more loop off the hook. We'll add another chain and then pull through 2 more loops twice for our first lace part on the return pass of row 2. So for row 3, we'll pick up our first loop here in that chain 1 space, pick up a loop, and the next stitch TSS and the chain 1 space. Then we have that 3 together, so on top of that 3 together in that top loop is where we pick up our next stitch, and then we'll TSS the rest of the row. And picking up the border stitch or making the connection, and then we'll take the border stitch off, and then this time we're going to pull through 6 before we get to our 3 together. So we're making the return pass of row 3, so we have 6 loops that we pull off, and then we pull off another 3 together. Now you'll notice the first time we had a chain 1 immediately after the 3 together. On this return pass we take off 1 more loop before the chain 1. So you just need to watch that carefully where those chain 1s are. They're a little bit different on each of the rows. So I've taken off the border stitch, so now we'll take off 6 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then we'll do the 3 together, so I take off the working loop plus the 3 stitches, take off the next loop, and then do a chain 1. Take off the next loop, chain 1, and then take off the remaining loops. Okay, so we'll work 1 more row together. Row 4, pick up those first 2 stitches. In that chain 1 space, pull up a loop, and in the next loop, and the next space, pull up a loop. We have 1 more loop to pull up, and then we've reached our 3 together. So working on top of that cluster or the group of 3, we pull up our next loop. Should have 8 loops on the hook. We'll pick up the next 6. We'll have 14 loops on our hook and ready for the connection or the border stitch for the 15 loops on our hook. And then this time for row 4, we will remove 4 loops. So we take off the border loop and then 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll work another 3 together stitch. And then we'll take off 2 loops before the chain 1. Take off the next loop, chain 1 again, and then take off the remaining loops. And so on. So I'll let you continue to follow that chart and work through the rest of the rows. You'll want 27 rows, and we will do the bind off at the end of this block. So a reminder to bind off block 50. You may find it's a little bit wavy on the edges. Once you put the vertical line on it, it helps to straighten that out. And if you've made a connection, it will help that side, or once we put a border on that side, it will help straighten this block out. So after block 50, we want to come back down to our second marker, and we will join in the back side of that loop, and then reaching in front of the bind off stitches, we will pick up the 4 loops across and make our connection and do 27 rows for this vertical line. We will not bind off at the top of the vertical line. We're ready now to work block 51 on top of 49. So you will be picking up behind the horizontal line and connecting to the vertical line beside block 50. So you will connect behind your marker on that 5th loop from the edge, picking up the 30 loops across for 32 loops on your hook. You'll work the foundation row and another row of TSS and then a row of the reverse stitch, TRS. So this block is using some increase and decrease stitches. So we've worked this where we work the TSS, yarn over TSS all in the same stitch, and we've worked these 3 together stitches. So it's a 2-part process. We'll have extra loops on our hook in the forward pass, but when we take them all off at the end of return pass, we will return to the regular amount of loops. So for row 4, we will start with 4 TSS stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then the next stitch is the increase. So you can TSS, yarn over, TSS, all in that same stitch, and then continue to work 3 TSS stitches and increase in the next stitch. Now, if you find once you've done your return pass that you're getting quite a large hole where you have these 3 stitches in the one, you can work it as a knit stitch if you prefer. So you'll pull up a loop as a knit stitch, yarn over, and then pull up the next loop as a knit stitch as well. So you can decide which way will work better for you. And TSS in 3, and so on down the row. So you can finish picking up your loops for that row. Again, you will have extra loops on your hook at this point. 14 extra loops, so you'll have 46 loops on your hook at the end of the forward pass. And then I'll meet you there and we'll start working the return pass. So working the return pass for row 4 here, at the end there's that blank square in the chart. Remember, that just means no stitch. It's to help us when we're doing the increases to show the return pass. Just ignore that on our forward pass. So row 4, return pass, we're going to work right now. We'll pull off, we count the return pass stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4 loops we will take off and then do a 3 together. So we take off our border loop and the first loop and take off the loops of the increase. And then these next 3 stitches that were in between the 2 increase stitches, we're going to take off, so yarn over and pull through the working loop plus the next 3 loops to show the 3 together stitch. So we'll take off the 3 loops of the increase, 2 and 3, and then take off the next 3 loops as a 3 together. So we'll continue to work that down the row, and then take off the next 3 loops. The increase, 3 loops, and work a 3 together. And then we'll have the last loop and the border loop to take off. And then as we work row 5, we'll pick up our first stitch, and then in the loop on top of that 3 together stitch is where we work the increase for this next row, or on this next row, and then the 3 loops in between we'll pick up 2 and 3. Increase on top of that 3 together stitch and pick up the next 3 loops. So you can continue to work that down this row. And then the return pass for row 5, we pull off the border stitch and the first loop, and then we work a 3 together. Take off the 3 loops from the increase and work a 3 together. 1, 2, 3, and work a 3 together. So you can see how the 3 together and the increase form a nice pattern when they're stacked on top of each other. So you can go ahead and finish this row and the rest of the rows for this 12-row block. And be sure to bind off the end of this row as well. And then you will also work this horizontal line on top of block 51 to prepare for block 52. So for block 52, you will just pick up at the edge of your last horizontal line. I am not doing complete blocks here, so mine will look a little bit different here. I'm going to be just showing you the stitches you need to know from this point on. So you pick up on your last horizontal line, picking up those 30 loops across. Pick up your loops for your foundation, and then on the return pass, we need to do some of these 2 together stitches with the occasional chain 1. So I'll help you get started with that, and I'll show you row 2 as well, and then you can continue to follow the rest of the chart to complete this block. So for row 1 return pass, we will take off the border loop and the first loop plus 1 more. So the border loop and 2 more loops we take off regular return, and then we want to do a 2 together. So we pull through that working loop and the next 2 loops for a 2 together stitch. Then we'll take off 11 loops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and here we want to add the chain 1, and then we'll do another 2 together stitch and take off 11 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Add that chain 1, and we'll take off the last 2 loops plus the border loop to finish row 1. Then for row 2, we will pick up these first 2 stitches, 1 and 2, and then in that chain space we will pull up a loop, and we'll pull up a loop. We will knit stitch each of the next 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, and we'll have reached that 2 together stitch, so we want to make sure our hook goes under both of those stitches to pull up the next loop. And then in that hole we will pull up a loop and knit in those next 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Hook under both loops of that 2 together to pull up the next loop, and TSS in the last 2, and make the next connection. And then again, we'll pull off those first 2 loops and then work a 2 together. And then this time we will pull off 10 loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Do the chain 1, pull off the next loop, and then the 2 together stitch again. Take 10 more loops off. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, oops, and 10. Chain 1, pull off the next loop, which was the loop that we picked up in the previous chain 1, and then the last loops of the row. So each row you will be making a decrease in the amount of stitches in between the 2 together and the chain, and then it will increase the TSS between the 2 groups of those. So you can go ahead and finish up those 12 rows for this block and do the bind off, and then you will need to work your vertical line from the top of the vertical line of block 49. You'll work the vertical line beside 51 and 52 and a horizontal line across 52 and 50, and bind off that horizontal line as well. And I'll see you back here next time for part 14.